having no fun here over at Sound Advice. Tips for musicians having to do with marketing, PR, and basic overall exposure. So the next topic I want to address is Derek has a blog, and on it recently posted some really, to me, mind-blowing statistics about, well, the percentage of artists and what they sell at CD Baby. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It was interesting to me, too. Somebody asked me recently, like, well, what percentage of your artists make up 50% of your sales or something like that? And I said, wow, I never really ran that query before. So I kind of asked the database, you know. And it was interesting that 10% of our artists make up 90% of our sales. So it kind of leads to that idea where every now and then people ask me, so what does the average artist on CD Baby sell? And I say, well, there isn't really an average. You got to understand there's a couple different types of artists. Some musicians, when they put out a record, it's like the starting gun has gone off. It's like the record's done, and they're like, here we go, we're going to tour, we're going to promote, we're going to tell everybody we are going to hit this thing so constantly that everybody on earth is going to buy it. So an artist like that will sell an average of like 100 or 200 CDs through us. But then there's some artists that it's like, they have a comfortable job as a chiropractor, they've always wanted to make a record but never did, they got some friends together, or they spent some of their chiropractor money and hired some top Nashville cats or whatever, and they made the record of their dreams. And they get the pretty artwork done, and they put it out, and it's like, I did it. I made a record. And they put it on CD Baby to give it some kind of legitimacy, like, see, and it's for sale. And then they never even tell anybody. They're done. And that artist may sell an average of 1 CD because they don't tell anybody. And so what's a shame is that you can't go look at the chiropractor's album and say, he only sold 1 copy, you know. Because if you're somebody that's like committed to promoting and working it, you're going to do well. Just you can't compare yourself. It's like 2 different approaches to a career.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. So there's nothing that differentiates the artists that sell from the artists that don't, aside from the fact that the ones that sell seem to have a little bit more gumption around it.
Okay, well, there's lots of things that differentiate them, actually. That it's not the quality of music, though. There's some people making amazing records that just don't sell a single copy because they don't tell anybody about it, you know. I mean, you'd be surprised. Okay, actually, you know, an enlightening day for me when I was 19 years old, I went to one of those educational music seminar days in Chicago where they'd had some band that was like, I forget what they were, but they were kind of like the Smashing Pumpkins of the day. They were like a big band from Chicago that had like come back to speak at this educational event for the day. And I remember just being a 19-year-old thinking I was going to go get a record deal or whatever. And what he said was really interesting. He said, guys, you know what? In hindsight, getting signed was the easy part. He said, after we got signed, that was like the hardest 3 years of my life because every day you have to like be up at 5 a.m. to go do the early 6 a.m. radio interview, then you have to do the 10 a.m. in-store, then you have to do the 12 o'clock interview, and then you have to do the afternoon warm-up, then you have to do the nighttime show, then go hit the road and drive for 12 hours to get there in time to do the 6 a.m. interview again and the 10 a.m. And they said, I always thought that when I got signed that the record label would go make people buy my CD. He said, no, it was me. He said, we had to go win over fans one at a time, and our record label was just the somewhat brainless organization that got it into the shelves so that as we were making people love our music, it was there for them to buy. And I think that's what musicians still don't understand is they think that, boy, if I just had a label, then I could just sit back and everybody would appreciate my genius.
All our problems will be solved. I mean, and I see that too. When bands get dropped, all of a sudden, you know, their fan list is not in their control, or they realize, you know, they've let go of a lot of their contacts, and it can be disastrous.
Yeah. So it's bad news is, or good news, if depending on how you think about it, it's still all up to you. It's like whether you get signed or not doesn't really matter. That's just it'll be a little more infrastructure behind you, but it's still up to you. You will never be able to just sit back and have somebody else make people want your music. You're still going to have to learn how to win over fans one at a time on a day-to-day level. So it's like the musicians who understand that now will do well. They'll do well in gigs and booking bigger venues and getting a bigger audience. They'll do well in sales, both digital and physical. They'll do well in meeting connections because they realize you can't just sit back and wait for the most brilliant booking agent to approach you and say, hey, I hear you're brilliant. You have to still go approach people. So it's like, I think that's the difference. The type of musicians that realize that they have to do all the work and do well. And those that don't, and they sit at home, get high, watch TV, complain, don't do well.